First, we will look at the coordination
usage section.
Now, this is a tough sentence to dissect.
First, let's look at how they asked these questions
and the type of questions they asked. And he was most famous for his discovery of electricity. The format the ACT chooses
going to be given the choice
to give you prose or essay format. That's going to be the correct answer.
Paragraph form,
because he was,
and they'll underline sections of the paragraph.
But he was most.
This is where you need to determine
whether there's an error.
It makes for a better
and
sentence.
If there is an error, what the correction should be. In this case, not only did they swindle money from the buyers, but they also belie. Okay, belie can't be changed, and it's in the present tense. So we got to change did to do. You don't have a comma there, and you wouldn't have a do not. The answer choices will be numbered and be out to the right of the paragraph section. Now notice they also have another feature here in that they have A, B, C, D answers, then they follow that with F, G, H, J. So don't let that confuse you. Now we'll look at the most common rules they question you on. They'll question you on subject-verb agreement. In this case, along the white sand beach sits the beautiful condominiums. Well, condominiums are the subject of this sentence, so the correct word should be sit. There will be questions seeing if you know the difference between the comparative and the superlative. In this case, both of my friends are excellent swimmers, so it's difficult to determine which one is best. When you have two that you're comparing, you use the comparative. So this should be which one is better. When you have three or more, you use the superlative. That's where you would use best. There will be helping verb errors. There'll either be an additional or extraneous helping verb, or there'll be a helping verb needed. In this case, the security guard gave us a real inspection when we tried to enter the museum. That should be simplified to just gave. The security guard gave us a real inspection. There may be what we'll call wrong word error choices. These are words that can be commonly confused, like perspective as opposed to prospective, accept as opposed to accept. Now we'll have a list of these words available online and give you one as well, but this is a spot where you need to read very carefully and be sure you have your spelling correct. Idioms can be a little bit tricky because these are speech forms that follow no easily specified rules. We will make a list of correct idiomatic expressions available. In this case, the school officials were pleased with the attempt at attracting a highly respected instructor. This should be attempt to attract a highly respected instructor. They like to place the verb next to nouns that are modifying the subject of a sentence, so that your subject and verb are separated by another noun. In this case, increased levels of air pollution causes many of our health problems. Well, levels is the subject of this sentence, and the correct verb should be cause many of our health problems. You need to be careful and make sure you have number agreement. In this case, while the economies of the Scandinavian countries and Great Britain are considered an example of success, they are too different to be considered together. This should be examples, because the economies are examples. There will also be questions to see if you can identify pronoun number error. In this case, the typical college student has difficulty adjusting to academic standards much higher than those of their school. Well, this is a singular student, not a plural student, so it should be his or her. A frequent error source is having a personal pronoun in the wrong case, confusing whether it should be in the subjective or objective case, as in this case where you have my aunt and uncle join my parents and I for dinner every Thursday. Well, this is incorrect. It should be my aunt and uncle join my parents and me for dinner every Thursday. One of the ways to clear the confusion on this is just to isolate that pronoun. You'd say my aunt and uncle join me for dinner every Thursday, wouldn't you? Well, just let the personal pronoun stand on its own, and that'll simplify things. You can't shift a pronoun within a sentence. In this case, one cannot sleep soundly if you exercise vigorously before retiring to bed. Well, you've got to keep it parallel. This should be one cannot sleep soundly if one exercises vigorously before retiring to bed. Ambiguous pronoun references require you to read very carefully. In this case, after the derailment last month, they are inspecting trains for safety more than ever before. Well, who is they? We have nothing for that they to refer to. Yet the sentence sounds pretty good. This requires you to really be careful reading these sentences. Faulty comparisons are another tough one. In this case, you've got a Nobel Peace Prize winner and the author of several respected novels. Elie Wiesel's name is still less well known than last year's Heisman Trophy winner. Well, name is what's being compared here. Name is the subject, and name is being compared to a winner. So you're comparing a name with an actual person. You can't do that. Faulty comparison. You've got to keep your verb forms parallel. In this case, to lash back at one's adversaries is a less courageous course than attempting to bring about reconciliation with them. You've got to keep it parallel, so this should be lashing back at one's adversaries. There will certainly be one, probably several, questions about the misuse of adjectives or adverbs. In this case, the applicants for low-interest loans hope to buy decent-built houses for their families. Well, these houses aren't built decent. These houses are built decently. So you should substitute decently for decent to have the correct form. Since you hear double negatives fairly often in conversation or on TV, you've got to be careful with this. In this case, James easily passed the biology exam without hardly studying his lab notes. Well, you got a double negative there, without hardly. Run-on sentences can be separated into either two independent clauses or two separate sentences. In this case, the decrease in crime can be attributed to a rise in the number of police officers. More than 500 joined the force in the last year alone. Well, we either need a period or a semicolon in place of that comma to correctly separate these. Be sure that you have a complete sentence, that you have a subject and a verb, and that the phrase you're looking at isn't just a sentence fragment, like this one, where you have, while many office managers are growing more and more dependent on facsimile machines, others resisting this latest technological breakthrough. That's just not a complete sentence. There's no verb there. Be careful with misplaced modifiers, because some of these sentences can sound pretty good, yet you have to look at it very strictly and make sure that the modifier is in the right place. In this case, flying for the first time, the roar of the jet engines intimidated the small child. Well, obviously you're trying to indicate that the small child is flying for the first time, but the modifier is modifying the roar of the jets. Faulty coordination can be tough. Now, this is a tough sentence to dissect because it says Ben Franklin was a respected and talented statesman, and he was most famous for his discovery of electricity. You're going to be given the choice of adding a but here. That's going to be the correct answer because he was a respected and talented statesman, but he was most famous for his discovery of electricity. It makes for a better sentence, better coordination.